Ulysses Campbell with Fantastic Forum, and I'm here with the review that you're waiting for, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. I went into this movie with low expectations. One overriding wish was that it simply not suck. I'm a fan, and I'm a purist, who feels that the original comic book source material needs to be respected. DC hasn't enjoyed the same level of success that Marvel has had with their movies, but they've tended to do better when they followed a blueprint of a comic book. This film is loosely based on the 1986 miniseries The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. I was skeptical. The reason for that was The Dark Knight Returns was an out-of-continuity story that took place at the conclusion of Batman's career and after the Justice League had disbanded. So how in the world do you use this story as your launch point for the Justice League? Well, Batman vs. Superman, The Dawn of Justice doesn't suck. In fact, it delivers on a number of levels. There's respect for the original source material, and there's plenty for those less invested in the comic books. And it even has Wonder Woman. Now, as any fan of the comics knows, a popular plot device is when two superheroes first meet, they mistake each other for villains. This allows the characters to fight before realizing their mistake, and then later teaming up against the real bad guys. This story follows that pattern. Batman is sore about the Kryptonian rampage in Man of Steel that leveled much of Metropolis. Superman is convinced that Batman is a dangerous vigilante whose methods are too extreme. Ben Affleck does a good turn here as Batman. Anyone who was worried about his performance needn't be. Affleck handles the role with gravitas and pathos that's appropriate for Batman. Henry Cavill's Superman remains as we saw him in Man of Steel, although he spends considerably more time as the not-so-mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent. Although one of my criticisms, which has nothing to do with Cavill, is that this isn't the Superman that I grew up with. Much of the essential character is there, but neither this nor Man of Steel is a movie that I'd automatically take a child to see. And I think that's ultimately a sort of sad, albeit understandable commentary on a movie that features Superman. The supporting characters are all solid, even if they don't have much to do. Amy Adams, Diane Lane, Jeremy Irons, Lawrence Fishburne, and Holly Hunter are all fine performers who hit their marks. Jesse Eisenberg stood out for me. I really enjoyed his take on Superman's nemesis Lex Luthor. Eisenberg seemed to have a lot of fun with the role. He played Luthor with a frivolity, while simultaneously keeping the character menacing. And then there was Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. It was refreshing simply to see that character after decades of big screen neglect. Now, when I heard about her being cast, I dogged her out as being too skinny. I think she's still on the slim side, especially in cities, but she looked good enough in the costume that I believed her. So Gal, I'm sorry, and I'm really looking forward to her solo movie, which receives a lot of foreshadowing here. The story is predictable, especially if you're familiar with the comics. At times, I thought it drew a bit too heavily from lines of dialogue from The Dark Knight. No one has ever tried to do a movie with both Superman and Batman before. These characters are so different, it was bound to be tough to make a cohesive movie with those two. What should have been about the contrast between the characters was blunted a bit by the fact that Superman was made darker and grittier. But there is an engaging storyline about xenophobia that was fresh and thought-provoking, particularly given that Superman has always been acknowledged as a hero despite his extraterrestrial origins. But that is yet another modern element that's injected into the Superman mythos. And there was some pretty heavy foreshadowing of the coming Justice League, as you might imagine from a movie subtitled Dawn of Justice. The producers showed more of the League than they needed to serve the story elements, but true fans will eat it up while wanting more. I geeked out when Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman all appeared together on the screen for the first time. It was a moment in cinematic history that had me screaming in the theater. Superman and Batman have to put aside their differences and team up with Wonder Woman to fight Doomsday, who is a Luthor creation in this movie. It's an all-out battle royal extravaganza. The final act fell a little flat with me. I've become desensitized to excessive CGI, superhuman combat, but overall it was a very enjoyable movie-going experience. Just seeing Batman and Superman being friends was worth it for me. The movie ends with a bit of a cliffhanger, but the setup for the next few movies is all right there. I predict that this will be Warner Brothers' biggest superhero movie to date. And despite my harsh criticism, I give it 2.5 out of 4 stars. DC is set to compete with Marvel. Zack Snyder has done his job. You can go see it. It doesn't suck. Ulysses Campbell for Fantastic Forum.